I'm Troy from Big Water UAV Solutions, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. This is my first vlog, and I'd like to discuss my thoughts, anyways, on the FAA's Remote ID proposal and what it could mean for all of us drone pilots, not only commercial, but the recreational pilots as well. That's up next. So the FAA is proposing to implement remote ID for drones. A license plate in the sky, so to speak. Most of us knew this was coming. Its purposes, I believe, are twofold. To open the skies eventually for beyond visual line of sight, drone delivery, and as a basis for UTM. To catch those who flaunt regulations, or more importantly, bad actors. However, bad actors, by the rules anyways, as we see with a multitude of other laws which are passed, will not abide by those. What's the saying? When drones are outlawed, only outlaws will have drones? Or you can pry the controller from my cold dead hands? All kidding aside, I believe that the intention of remote ID is a good thing. However, several of the proposals raise a multitude of questions and would effectively end the home-built and FPV recreational pilots. It would box these users into designated areas yet to be determined, an unnecessary restriction placed on users who fly for fun. But more on that later. 3 ways of flying with remote ID are proposed: standard remote ID, limited remote ID, and no remote ID. Standard remote ID states that the UAV must both broadcast its position, altitude, and the UAV serial number, or a proposed session ID, via the radio band, and also broadcast its information via the internet or cell service to a designated USS provider. The information to be broadcast would be available not only to law enforcement, but also to the general public via an app. This information being available to law enforcement does not bother me in the least. However, my private information being disseminated to the general public is of great concern, and I believe can and probably will lead to retaliatory action for perceived invasions of privacy. Supposedly, the remote ID session ID eliminates the user's information being visible to the general public. But a lot of questions remain. Additional questions need to be answered and clarified about the USSS provider storing this information. We all know that any information that is out there in the cloud can and probably will be hacked or breached. Additional questions are raised for the areas that lack cell phone coverage, which are prevalent in rural or mountainous areas. Supposedly, the FAA has clarified that the UAV must broadcast its information via the radio band, but as long as that is working, even if no internet or cell phone coverage is available or is lost during the operation, the UAV would be allowed to fly. Though the initial impression for the draft is not always clear on this and appears contradictory in some sections of the document, it is my understanding that most higher-end drones meet this qualification. Limited ID is for a UAV that does not have the capability to broadcast its information via the radio band and is only capable of broadcasting its information via an internet or cell connection. With the connection, the UAV will be limited to flying within 400 feet of the controller. Without the connection, it will not fly. If the connection is lost during the flight, the user will need to land as soon as possible. Again, This is all being broadcast and data stored by a USSS provider, and the user's information may be available to the general public. So the two previously mentioned ways of transmitting remote ID require a subscription to a USSS provider, with the cost being unknown as of now. And additionally, according to a sample flight listed by the FAA, if your connection to your designated provider is unavailable or down, you will not be allowed to fly unless you have a roaming plan. If no providers are available when connected to the internet, even though you have the internet connection, you will not be allowed to fly. Other concerns I have. So a question remains for me on the internet cell connection. Will this be a connection from the controller, the UAV, or your cell phone? What if your cell phone is switched to airplane mode? How exactly do they plan to implement this requirement in the standard remote ID proposal? Concerns on cost as well are a factor. Concerns on cost to connect to a USSS provider and data security. Concerns on pilot privacy. After all, another driver can't look up your name or address based upon your license plate number in your car. Why should anyone in your operational area be able to do that other than law enforcement? This leaves us with the FPV AMA home-built community. UAVs which do not have the capability to broadcast information either via the radio band and connect to the internet, they will be restricted to designated yet to be determined areas. Supposedly, applications must be submitted for these areas, and once the deadline for submissions are up, no more will be allowed. I can certainly understand the need for these areas in other than Class G airspace, but keeping in mind that normally aircraft have no reporting requirements or restrictions in Class G airspace, why should the hobbyist have to abide by the restrictions other than height? It appears to me that the proposals were written with beyond visual line of sight and drone delivery in mind, and I understand the reasoning behind the proposed policy. We all need to do our part by commenting in a structured and succinct manner. Just writing to the FAA and bitching won't do much good. And copying what others have said verbatim will do little good as well. The UAV community as a whole is rather unorganized, no real lobbying organization for all pilots, regardless of recreational or commercial status. I myself have joined the AOPA, as they have raised a lot of the same concerns I have. The Drone U is also a great resource for how to comment to the FAA with your concerns. I'll list these links in the description. I'll be doing my part in writing a comment to the FAA, and we'll share what I have wrote in a future vlog or vlog. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll subscribe and leave a thumbs up as well as a comment.